Hi, I'm Erica, and you are watching my Introduction to Quilting course. Now, if you're here, you already know a little bit about quilting, but you may not be really comfortable with the whole process itself. I want to be able to fill you with resources that will help you to understand the terminology and the tools and the whole process of quilting so that you're not unsure, nervous, there's no anxiety to the whole process. Starting off, there are 4 parts to any quilt. You have your quilt top, you have your batting, your backing, and then your binding. And so in this video here, what we're going to talk about is each one of those elements. I'm going to give you some examples of each so that when you are out shopping for patterns, you're reading patterns, you're getting fabric and the different notions and such that you need for the process, you'll understand what you're looking for. Okay, so let's start with the quilt top. Oftentimes, a quilt top, you'll hear people talk about a flimsy. What that is just the top of the quilt. That's the piecing that has been put together, very much like the one that I have on the wall right here. It's only one layer of fabric, all of the pieces put together. Now, we can put our quilt top together in a bunch of different ways. So let me show you some different ways. We have traditional piecing, we have applique, we have foundation paper piecing, and then we have English paper piecing. Quilters are very creative and very resourceful and come up with different techniques in order to get the finished look that they want. And these 4, traditional piecing, foundation paper piecing, applique, and English paper piecing, those 4 are the most popular forms of quilting. So I want to kind of go through and show you some examples of what these look like. Traditional piecing is going to look something like this. It's where you have your geometric shapes that have been cut out and pieced together, and in the back you see all of the seams and the seam allowances folded to one side. Everything is put together so that the raw edges, those cut raw edges of your pieces, they're hidden from the top of your quilt. Your traditional piecing can come in lots of different shapes and sizes. This one here, this one is called a disappearing 4-patch block. Later on in another video I'll explain how this one goes, but disappearing 4-patch, very easy to do. But again, we have straight lines, we have simple geometric shapes, squares and rectangles, right? Whereas on this one, which is also traditionally pieced, you have not just squares and rectangles, but we now have triangles, and we have these long diagonal strips. So your traditional piecing, it doesn't matter what shapes you're finishing with, but it makes sure that you are piecing one geometric shape together with another geometric shape so that your seam allowances nest in the back. Okay, so that is your traditional piecing. Even the one that's on the wall behind me is traditionally pieced. Foundation paper piecing. This one has been foundation paper pieced. What makes foundation paper piecing different from traditional piecing is that you are stitching directly onto a paper that has been labeled with the different pieces that need to go into the block. You're stitching directly onto paper. You'll have the design drawn on the paper, and you will actually do the sewing of the fabric onto the paper. What that allows is for you to have very sharp, precise points. Your lines turn out to be beautiful. It gives you a nice, crisp, finished look. And it also allows for you to do pictorial quilts. So you're not just dealing with straight lines, you're able to create pictures, designs, draw apples maybe, or flowers with your quilting design. Again, you have your seam allowances. The raw cut edges of your fabric are tucked in and hidden from the outside of your quilt, right? Another way of piecing your quilt top is called English paper piecing. Now this one is a little bit different than the foundation paper piecing. With English paper piecing, you actually wrap your fabric around shapes. Once you wrap them around the shapes and you secure them, then you stitch your fabric together along the edges of the shapes. So with this one, I had a hexie, and you have one in the center and several hexies coming around, right? So I had these two, and I hand stitched down this seam and across that seam, and to attach it all together to make that cute little flower, it was all done by hand. English paper piecing is done by hand. It is not done on machine. Your foundation paper piecing is done on machine, and your traditional piecing can be done either on machine or by hand, usually on machine. English paper piecing has to be done by hand. Now, once you have all of those hexies or whatever shape you're working with, has to be a geometric shape. Once you have all of those put together, then what? Well, your options are to either sew on a border to frame it so that you can create a square, or you can applique it, and that's our fourth type of technique to get our design into our quilt top. It's to applique. Now, if you look at this one, what I did was stitched all the way around this cute little flower, and you can see the little yellow stitches that are running all the way around. That is appliquing. Applique means that I take one shape and I sew it directly onto a larger piece of fabric. Another example of applique you can see right here. I've taken this maple leaf design, cut it out of the brown fabric, and I temporarily adhered it to the white fabric to get a nice sized block. Once I have it adhered, then I do my stitching to go all the way around to permanently join the brown fabric to the white fabric. And then I have the block, that big white block, that I can join into maybe a pillow or a quilt, you know, a larger quilt or a wall hanging. But the process of stitching the brown fabric, that shape, onto the larger white fabric, that is called applique. Now, there are a lot of different kinds of applique. There are different ways of doing your foundation paper piecing, different techniques to do your traditional piecing. I'm going to go through that in a later video. But for now, I want you to just have that understanding in mind that there are lots of different ways that you can go about actually putting together your quilt top or your flimsy, okay? It doesn't have to be just one way. And honestly, some people prefer doing applique rather than the traditional piecing. Some people like the foundation paper piecing over other types of quilt top making. It just depends on what draws your attention and what you like. Hey guys, so that was a preview of my new course for intro quilters, folks who are interested in the craft but you don't really have a knowledge base from which to start. My course is going to cover all of the basics that you need, from understanding what a quilt actually is to talking about tools and fabric and techniques and everything that you need to get yourself on that quilting journey. So if you're interested, or you know someone who is interested, go hop over to my website, click on the courses tab, and the courses will be there available to you. I can't wait to see you on that side, and I'd love to hear your feedback on what you think about the class. See you soon.